Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you. We have writer and director Alex Ullom here. Very happy to I have a lot of questions. I've seen this movie 3 times, and I have a bunch of questions, and then we'll open it up at the end. But I just wanted you to talk a little bit about, because I know there's a crazy story behind it. How did you get this movie made? How did you get it financed? There's a lot of advice these days of just like, go find $100,000, go find $500,000. How did you actually get this movie made?
Okay, I'm gonna ramble for a while, but I'm gonna do the whole fucking thing. I want to be as transparent as possible because I've been to a lot of these. I think, okay, so I graduated in COVID 2020, moved home with my degree in hand. My parents were like, we fucking told you so. I'm scouring the internet for film work. I'm like wheeling it. Mic check. Okay, there we go. I'm like wheeling and dealing feature screenplays for like $1,000 on Upworks. I was one of like the early members of the whole Wall Street Bets fiasco. I was getting paid to make memes on there for a while. The whole thing. I was like writing copy for pyramid schemes. The whole time, I had a singular pyramid scheme that reached out to me to do, well, I applied for the job. Basically, whatever. My friends and I knew the entire time, like, the independent feature is the future. The industry operates on exploitation. The only way out is like the thing our heroes did. We budgeted out, we're like, we can make this movie for $30,000. I'm gonna try to get to this next part as fast as possible. Okay, so if someone comments on one of the memes I make and is like, hey, I would pay for more of this, I end up responding like, here's my phone number, my email, my social security, here's everything. He reaches out, ends up being a career magician who from, one second. He ends up being a career magician who from ages 18 to 26 worked on Carnival Cruise Line where he was a stagehand to a mountain lion act. One day the mountain lion passes away, they fire him, he dumps all his money in the stock market at 08, it blows up, he uses that to finance a magician on the street show, he gets picked up a spike, he uses that to soft launch his author career, which he then wins a Peabody Award for writing sci-fi novels, and then he gets on the board of OpenAI, but like, he's like, dude, take your shot, here's $10,000, this is nothing to me. So like that check clears, we immediately open the LLC, we're like, let's fucking go, we're in business. I have a really good YouTuber friend before that was like cool and before Hollywood was like mining that, or culture, whatever, it doesn't matter, I'll get into that. He gives me $10,000 because he had a really great, his video essays, and so they, algorithm paid him really well. And then for the last 10,000, I still have not figured out how to talk about this without making it sound like, okay, I was living in LA at this time, and I would sit in virtual reality poker lobbies for hours on end and talk to strangers.
Nice.
Because he would fucking hate to hear this, but there's a huge overlap between independent film investors and gambling addicts. Like, I am one of those, for the record. I'm not, if you are gonna finance my movie, I'm not a gambling addict, for the record. Semi-immediate tone shift and a bit darker part of the story, but it's also weird because it's baked into the themes of the film, but we lost a really close friend during COVID. His parents started a fund in his name called Spark the Arts, and they threw us an extra $5. So originally we shot principal we'll get to the next question, I'm so sorry. We originally shot principal in 2022 for $35K. I cast off of Instagram, like, who wants to be in a movie? I read like, 300 to 500 people. Landing on the most talented cast ever. Like, it was really just who could punch up the dialogue the most, and like, this movie lives and dies by them. I fucked the movie up, like, it doesn't work. Like, I'd never paced for longer than 20 minutes, it was like a film school type experience. It originally was a lot more hangout. And I think I blew my shot. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment with Fisher, my first AC, and my sound guy in Glendale. I'm like living in a walk-in closet. I'm like, fuck, I should have listened to my parents. And I'm like sitting, tough time. Eventually I cut together like 20 minutes, like the hangout scene into the attack scene. And it works. I hit up the magician to ask for more money naturally. And like, he's like, we drive to San Francisco and say like, hey, can we screen this to you and your rich friends? And he was like, yeah. And so we me and Evan Barber, one of my producers, drove up there, and I don't know what pointed at, but he's over there. I don't know. We drive to San Fran and screen in his living room, and then we're like, all right, $3,000 a share. We raise another like 10 grand. My YouTuber friend also puts in another 5. We shoot for 15 extra. At this point, it's like 2023. Plug some holes. We like also would go out to like bars in LA. Or, like we would just filter a bunch of strangers into our apartment and friends to like watch a 2.5-hour cut and just ruin their fucking weekend. Like you could feel the parts that didn't work, and so it really like honed in on what we had to fix. That version gets into Fantasia. We're like, okay, that's the full life cycle of the film. We're done. We go for post. I learned that that's like ungodly expensive, which never made sense to me because it's on a computer. But it's such a stupid statement. Like, anyways, we go for post. Elio Nostos, Ben Megler, Chris Amick, who are FSU alumni, are like, hey, if we get you post financing, can we have EP credits? And I'm like, you can have whatever you want at this point. They take it out to their network, and that's when Snoop comes on. They did like the guest and blind spotting, which is sick. And
Nice.
they're like, hey, are you open to doing some more pickups? And I look at my producer Evan and Carrie Carasone also, and like, can we go back one more time? At this point it was like 2020, late 2024. So like we had all fully come of age. Like it was like, the actors had lived with the characters forever. We go back, like nail the pickups. I think the budget at that point plus an extra 50 is like we're sitting around like 80, 90 before post. I like to be transparent with the budget, so I think I'm allowed to do that. If there's a neon executive, okay, she did this, so I think. And that version gets into South by, and so like that was the most insane shit ever. Like getting into South by, like all love to them. We premiere, great reviews, and then we're just like fully dead in the market. Like a very disheartening, like the shift that's kind of going on right now had not happened yet, and there was like multi-million-dollar movies with movie stars like getting like $20,000 offers from these distributors because we had no one knew what was going to happen. I get representation out of it, and it's like, okay, I guess that's the end of the movie. Eventually, I think about like 4. This is where holy shit, I'm still on the first question. Basically, how we originally met. Can I jump to that? Or okay. I have a meeting on the Universal lot where they're like, hey, nice movie, kid. Obviously, we're not fucking buying it. Like it's Universal, but like it was a cool general meeting. I'm walking out. They're having the press event for Jurassic World Rebirth.
Yes.
Yes, Rebirth. That's yes.
Yes.
I like Jurassic World for the record. That was not derogatory. That likes it too. Yeah. So I see that they're having this press event, and I can see this guy who I watch online and all these other movie influencers that I recognize. And between them and me is this fence, and I call my manager and I'm like, hey, if I get kicked off the Universal lot for sneaking in, is that like a career ban? Like, will that affect me negatively? He was like, whatever the fuck you're about to do not tell me. So I sneak into this fucking thing, security swarm on me. I say I'm one of the dumb influencers that they flew. Not, sorry, I have a lot of friends that are influencers. I don't mean to call them dumb. All I'll say is that security immediately believed me that I got lost and like decided to come into that way. So they bring me in, I get a bunch of free dinosaur merch, and I come up directly to this guy and I say like, thank you for like talking about movies and exposing kids to like, cinema, etc. And he's like, where is your movie? We all heard about it. Like, why can't we watch it? And I was like, we're dead. We have nothing. There's nothing. It's over. And luckily, like, I send him the movie. He likes it. Posts about it. Then this really beautiful online horror community just starts supporting the hell out of the movie. And you and then Kid Laser, and then the Letterboxd CEO sees that. Hits us up, some like Field of Dreams, synchronicity is like launching the video store and offers us the inaugural like spot in that video store. We go on there, but that reception's really well, and at the same time, we're also taking out my next project, and those things sunk up, plus this really beautiful, mainly that really beautiful community, and also the delusional aspects of our friend group, like going for it when Neon finally swooped in. Okay, that's the whole story, that's why I'm here.
So there you have it. That is how you make a movie. You don't need to ask us anymore how you raise the financing, how you do it, how you get distribution. That is That is it.
That's the sausage being made.
I have questions about what's actually in the movie that I also want to get to. So the interesting thing, and I think we talked about this the first time we met, and you were sort of like, I knew what the premise of the movie was, and you were also pitching me the movie. You had described it as
Aggressively, by the way.
you had described it as a horror film that turns into a Linklater film, like halfway through.
Yeah.
And when I was rewatching it recently, that is the biggest thing that I was struck by. Is like the movie, completely changes in the middle. Now you didn't make this for millions of dollars, so I would imagine there weren't people saying you can't do this. But had you always envisioned this movie doing that? Because it's a very specific choice, and I could see producers or industry people saying, I might want to stick to the horror, but you did something that's what makes it unique.
It was always part of the plan, and luckily our finance entities had no idea what about the even none of us had any idea about the marketplace. This film was never made with a market in mind. It was purely a group of delusional. I'm 28 now. We started this process when we were 22. It was a group of literally delusional film kids straight out of college that were like, let's go make a movie with our friends, which is why it's so absurd that anyone. I was ready to upload this movie on YouTube at a certain point. So it's just this whole thing's been incredibly absurd, but. I've always seen this movie as a literal battle between a hangout movie and a horror movie. I did always pitch it as a Linklater, I think James specifically represents a typical, and even a movement into adulthood in general is a typical horror genre movie is just overcoming conflict as quickly as possible, and then you learn from it. Guy with a knife in a kitchen, all right, now he's in the living room, overcoming that as quickly as possible, learning from it, internalizing it, and you pull some sort of meaning from that. And I think that what I found, at least when I got into adulthood, is that there is no hero's journey. It's just kind of a scrap in the mud daily to kind of pull some sort of meaning out of it. And I think James specifically represents a typical genre, narrative audience member. And just in general, he just needed an answer for why he was put through that suffering. I also always really wanted to see a post-game interview from the Hereditary family, and just where they could talk about it and just be that was fucking nuts that we went through that. That was their originally intention wise. I always just wanted to see them not to mention that in general, at least from people, actually everyone now, that there's just a interacting with terror and then having to go about your day and make me one second you're watching a dude's head gets blown off, the next it's a guy twerking, and it's just that's a very common physical experience now. I think that Fisher and Day represent a hangout movie. They've reached a point. That's also what the aspect ratio changes are. Every time the bars come in, we're in movie mode and plot mode, and literally to the point where Fisher and Day, who are trying to get James to hang out, literally turn off the story vehicle and say we're not doing this anymore, and James has to continuously continue his arc and his plot. For better or worse, I think that it also leaned into our scope. We were not getting a lot of setups a day, and when the movie slows down, there's almost 4 times as many cuts in the first half of the movie as there in the second, and you just lock the camera off and you let the actors cook. I think that was always from the inception, but that's kind of all of the loose ideas that I think went into the battle of genres that happens, because it does slow down.
Speaking of letting the actors cook, how scripted was it? Because it feels so improv. It feels so natural. Are there entire scenes, entire conversations that are completely improv? What did the script look like?
So the conversations are never improv, but all of the written dialogue is punched up. If the line, the way that I would audition or look for the actors in general is if the line is may I have some water? Noah Toth, who plays Fisher, being dude, let me get some water, man, fuck. That immediately is just okay, that's an organic reaction. So the beats and emotional progression were always the same in the lines, but the actors specifically breathe the life into that stuff, and leading into their speech patterns in real life too.
What do you think is the biggest thing? Because you just you've made another movie. Your movie was just announced. All the brilliant young cast. what was the most important thing that you learned from making your first movie that you took in to your second movie? And how different was that experience making something that took you years that was so small versus really trying to get to the next level?
I mean, every single lesson on it was like, foundational film school type experience. But mainly, I think there's a lot of sequences, like production. It's weird that production is kind of the only part of the process you don't get to iterate it all. Like you get a million cuts and a million drafts, and then it's like, all right, it rained on a Tuesday, you're fucked. Like your movie's fucked. So like, I think. Oh, not only that, but also like testing out, like, you shot design on storyboard dope sequence, and then you get in the edit, you find out that storyboard didn't translate well to like the flow of the cutting. So before we went, we shot in Vancouver, literally wrapped like 3 days ago. I went and got like actors locally and shot the entire movie from beginning to end, and then edited the entire movie from beginning to end, because I was not going to fuck up that opportunity to like go. I knew I was not going to have the ability to go back and reshoot, 3 separate times, with actor schedules and all that stuff. So that, like, hyper prep. And then the biggest difference probably was like, this is going to sound so fucked, but like it was way easier having, like, it's a different vibe on set than like, I did miss a lot of my friends and like the scrappy nature, but also, I'm not having to help wrap the grip truck, like it's a much less physically taxing experience. The stakes are way higher, but I think you get your ass carried by like real professionals and people that are like, good at their job. Not that my friends were not good at their jobs, but like everyone's executing. You just have to like communicate it really well. So it actually was like a easier process, I guess.
That first night that we met, and you were talking about, you had mentioned, thank you for making videos that get young people into the theater. You have a lot of interesting, like, bigger ideas that we've talked about before, about just what you think needs to happen in the film industry, what types of movies need to happen, like what types of movies young people want to see. And that conversation has now finally caught up, and there's a lot of talk about Gen Z. Like, there was a stereotype that they didn't go to the theaters. Now we have the statistics finally to prove that they go to the theaters more than anyone. But there's also talk about what is theatrical, what is an event? Are we gonna make the horror memes? Are we gonna make all these different things, Reddit stories? What do you think your generation, what do you think young people want to see?
I'm not a spokesperson for my entire generation. I will say that, like, I think it's 2 parts. I actually see kind of like the only thing I can compare it to is like, I don't know, knock on wood obviously, but like the 70s movement, where there was an entire generation raised on like television, and the studio heads are like, we have no clue how to speak to these people anymore. Our model is broken. Like, fuck it, it's time to let the kids play. And you had this like you had the new club that came in and completely like kind of revamped theaters in that space. And I think that there are now just like, I know that, like, I'm not in the same fucking ballpark as Curry and Kane and upset, and like, Kane's a good friend of mine, but both of them had honed their craft for years. I just have to preface this really quick. Had like, they had worked on YouTube for a long time, and like their first features are hypothetically the hours of feature content that they had made on YouTube, and that's kind of what this movie was for me. And I think that to speak to YouTube and online content and all that stuff, there's almost like a monoculture coming back in a way, where the only real through line of all of these Gen Z filmmakers is that there's just like, there are sensibilities ingrained in, like, if a TikTok video hits fucking, 11 million likes, every single person my age has seen it. And there are certain like cultural sensibilities of that. Unfortunately for the millennials, like, your guys' internet was kind of like the Wild West, It was kind of like you click a wrong link and you see the Russian brick video or something like that.
Yeah.
By the way, you see a fucking 6-minute scene in here where the kids just talked about the Russian brick video. And
nice.
I had to cut it. It was part of the 2.5-hour cut, but a lot of the hangout shit got cut. Anyways, the millennials kind of had a very, there was no, like, for better or worse, like, big tech had not come in and perfectly tuned the physiological experience of being on a phone. So, I just think that there are baked in serious cultural sensibilities that are just out there now, and you see them when a meme goes viral or something. There's just a part of culture in a way, like almost like a monoculture coming back in a way. So I don't know specifically what they want to watch. I just think that their studios don't know how to speak to them. And that's why they're mining the shit out of YouTube and mining it, looking for who can tap into those. And for better or worse, I have no idea if I tapped into it. I don't know. I think that this is a miracle that this film is even playing here. But all I know is that I really hope that the level of, like, the theatrical experience is kind of like the last, religious experience that we have. And I hope that the level of support stays high and that the kids continuously are being met with that culture, regardless of whether or not it's being exploited by, big studios.
Do people have specific questions? I saw that hand first.
Yeah, I apologize for getting this wrong, but you had two cinematographers on this project, right?
Yeah.
So were they working together or between breaks? You have one and then you get one the other side of the break?
It was actually just like one, and then when we were doing pickups, they were busy, so we had to like kind of have someone come in. So that was really it. So they never worked together, but like they just shot different parts of the movie.
Did that impact the look at all?
I think that the first one set the base look, and then the second one was like executing. So it was a mix,
Yeah.
Well, first of all, congratulations on your debut. This was a fantastic film. And I think it's really cool that now you're being added to the list of like not small creators, sorry, let me rephrase that. Creators, growing creators that are putting themselves out there. I just want to know, what was it like for you stepping into the world of filmmaking and just like moving in a way of like uncertainty, like you said, like you had no idea how this was gonna go, and but you kept moving forward, just like how James did in the movie. So how was that for you?
It was like really, honestly, I was in a pretty, I don't know if it's clear in the movie, I had a pretty rough transition into adulthood, and like that's been stretched out over the last 5 years. And the only reason I really got through with it, obviously being, a delusional 22-year-old with psychosis, like helped in a way, but like the only reason I really got through is because of Evan Barber and Carrie Carson, my very close friends, and like the supportive friend. I think there was a day where I called them and I was like, I'm gonna destroy the hard drives. I can't do this anymore. Like, and they were like, first off, don't do that because we'll get sued, but also like, let's talk through this. So I'm not gonna hold you. It's been hell getting here, but I'm out of the walk-in closet. I have my own place now, so that rocks. And Carrie Carson and Evan Barber are still my lifelong friends and collaborators.
Oh.
Quick question. So I know there may be people here who want to make films, especially low-budget films. Other than the advice that people always say, which is just, you gotta go make it. Just go make it. What's the one thing you would tell to somebody who wants to make their It Ends?
I have very specific thoughts on this, and I do want to, like, I'm doing like a bunch of Q&As at film school, which is awesome, because like it really depends, and Duplass talked about this in his follow-up, like it depends on what your goal is. Like if your goal is to financially support yourself off your art, then there is a marketplace to be reckoned with. There is like a level of institutional support that you almost have to play to, and like sensibilities you do. I think we're still 3 to 5 years out from like a level of financial institutional support for dramas, and like I have close friends who are trying to greenlight stuff like that, and it's way fucking different ballgame. It's hard to do without famous people. I think that if your goal is to just make art and that's the process, then you can just get your friends and shoot in a living room and do it for no money, which I also think that there is space on that for YouTube. Like if your goal is to that, I guess there's another angle to financially support stuff where if the algorithms support it, that's a very shaky lifestyle, but like you can make money on YouTube. Like I've extremely financially successful friends that are, posting online. So I think I would tailor that advice definitely to like, what is your actual goal? I would say off the cuff, I know this is a topic of debate, but I would not spend any amount of money over $10,000 on a short film. I know that's like, sorry to like, I just have that belief. I have friends who have like won South by or something, so short films, and they, still it's a battle to get real financing for a feature. Again, back to whether or not it's a genre film. But right now, I really only see institutional support for horror. Maybe that will change if the trends stay high and the kids keep going to theaters. But it's whatever your specific goal is. Yeah.
Other question?
I'm so floored by this movie. I mean, like, I'm gonna be thinking about it for a long time. I don't know if you've already been asked this before, but I'm really curious. Like, there's so many themes and messages like baked into this. What do you want the audience like walk away from, either thinking about or like a message that you want to really land?
I think that baseline, I don't want to tell anyone to walk away with any specific thing. I will say just on a base level, it is optimistic. Like I do think that like it is an optimistic ending, like James finds peace. But I think that in a larger sense, it's weird because I'm if you talk to my 22-year-old self, he'd be rambling. He would have no fucking clue what to tell you right now. But as I've gotten older and looked at the movie, I feel like, people coming of age, and actually everyone in a general sense, or who's like grown up, is like, dealing with right now the dissolution of structures that kind of used to hold everything together, like, starting a family or buying a house or religion or nationalism or whatever. Like all these different structures are dissolving in front of us, and I think that like there's a bit of a just a movement forward. That's what I think is also the draw to liminal spaces. There's just this infinite transitional state, or the feeling that like something is coming. And I think in this void that we're in of like lack of meaning or tent poles of structure, like I think the only thing that can really hold us together or have some level of generational moral cohesion is hanging out and vibing.
Yeah, very true.
We have time for one more question.
Do you feel when rewatching a movie that's so deeply personal, with the experience of growing up and coming of age, the more you watch it, do you find it to be more comforting, or do you find it to be a bit more existential when it comes to the reflection of yourself and seeing these characters?
The question is, the more you rewatch it, is it more existential or is it more comforting for you?
You get a bit numb to anything you watch for a while, but I think that it's a really nice, like, I'm very grateful to have like a little moment in time captured. I think every time I watch it, I'm more just in the mind of like, holy fuck, I hope this joke lands. And then I'm like sitting over there secretly like watching you guys watch it for parts. But like, I think I'm grateful for it, I guess. Also, it's a sick Attack on Titan tattoo. Keep moving forward.
Keep moving
Thank
forward.
you guys for coming. Thank you for